You know, for over 100 years, if you asked anyone in this London neighborhood about Fairview Cottage, they'd all tell you the same charming story, that it was the very first house on the street, a real pioneer from the 1840s. It's the kind of story that's in all the local history books, even official records. But what if that entire picture-perfect story was just wrong?
So, this is Fairview Cottage in Stoke Newington, London. And for as long as anyone can remember, local lore has celebrated it as this classic mid-19th century villa, built way back in the 1840s. The story goes that it was the very first home to pop up on its street, Queen Elizabeth's Walk. I mean, this narrative is so well established, it's even in the official Historic England listing.
But what if it isn't? What if that whole story that everyone believes is just, well, not true? A team of local historians decided to dig a little deeper, and what they found turned this simple piece of local history into a fantastic detective story.
Okay, so before we get into all the detective work, let's just establish the official story, the picture-perfect myth that everyone accepted as fact for decades.
All right, so the story goes something like this. A local nurseryman named Alfred Kendall built this house in the 1840s on land he was leasing. It was the pioneer, you know, the first residential building on the block. A nice, simple, straightforward origin story that everyone just took as gospel.
Right, but here's the thing about good historians. They don't just accept stories, they investigate them. And as soon as researchers started checking this official tale against actual historical records, the whole timeline started to show some pretty serious cracks.
And the first clues that something was a little bit off came not from some dusty old book, but from old maps. You see, for historians, cartography is kind of like a time machine, right? It shows you a place exactly as it once was. And these maps, well, they were telling a very different story.
Okay, let's look at the actual proof. The map on the left here is from 1868. You can clearly see one big house, that's St. Mary's Villa, but where Fairview Cottage is supposed to be, there's nothing. Just a small outbuilding. Now jump ahead to the map on the right from 1894. All of a sudden, a brand new pretty big house has just appeared on that exact spot. So if the cottage was really built in the 1840s, where on earth was it in 1868?
The plot was definitely thickening. If the maps were right, the researchers needed more evidence to back it up. So the next stop was the census, that incredible snapshot of every single household taken once every decade.
And guess what? The census records totally backed up what the maps were suggesting. In 1871, there's only one house listed for the whole street. But just 10 years later, in 1881, something new has happened. There are suddenly two houses, St. Mary's Villa, the original one, and a newcomer called Elm Villa. Could this be our mystery house, just with a different name?
Okay, so the evidence was really starting to pile up, but the team needed that one piece of definitive proof. You know, the smoking gun. And to find it, they had to go looking for a voice from the past, hidden away in a London archive.
Tucked away among the records of the Ecclesiastical Commissioners for England, basically the folks who originally owned the land, was a set of deeds for the property. And it was right here, among all these centuries-old legal documents, that the truth was just sitting there, waiting to be found.
And this is it, the key to the entire mystery. It's a statutory declaration, which is just a formal, sworn legal statement dated 1886. And crucially, get this, it was signed by William Alfred Kendall, the son of the very man who supposedly built the house in the first place. He was there to set the record straight for a property sale.
Okay, listen to this. In his own words, under oath, William Kendall states that the house was erected in the year 1871. 1871, not the 1840s. A full 30 years later than the myth said. I mean, this was the moment the whole story just flipped completely on its head.
So this one single document was the key that unlocked the entire mystery. It gave us the correct construction date, 1871. Check. It confirmed the house's original name was Elm Villa, which, bam, perfectly matched that 1881 census. And it even explained when the name changed to Fairview Cottage. Just like that, the case was closed.
So, with the myth completely busted, we can finally set the record straight and piece together the true story of this street, and we can finally reveal the identity of the real first house.
On the left, that's St. Mary's Villa. This was the house we saw on those early maps. This was the original 1840s house built by Alfred Kendall, and it stood for over a century before it was demolished. And on the right, That's Fairview Cottage, the beautiful home we know today, but it's a relative newcomer, built 3 decades later by Kendall's son.
So here is the corrected history, nice and clear. St. Mary's Villa goes up in the 1840s. Then, in 1871, Elm Villa is built next door. It gets renamed Fairview Cottage around 1885, and finally, the original pioneer, St. Mary's Villa, is demolished in the 1960s, which is most likely how Fairview Cottage mistakenly inherited its origin story.
You see, this whole investigation isn't just about one house. It's really about the process of history itself, and how our understanding of the past is always evolving. And so, here we are, full circle. We can now look at this beautiful house, Fairview Cottage, and appreciate its true story. Not as a mid-19th century original, but as a fantastic example of early 1870s architecture, with a really fascinating hidden history. So you might be thinking, okay, so the house's age is off by 30 years. What's the big deal? Well, it matters because it shows that history isn't static. It's an active investigation. It proves that with careful, diligent research, we can find definitive answers and correct beliefs that have been held for generations. It's a powerful reminder to always question the stories you're told, even the ones that seem written in stone.
Which really just leaves us with one final thought. Every town, every street, maybe even your own house has a story. This whole journey started with a simple question about a date. So what widely accepted stories in your own local history might just be waiting for a curious mind to uncover the truth?